Everyone, and welcome to this panel session about student success in empowering social goods with cartography and GI science. I know it's the last day of the conference and it's the last session of the conference, so probably a lot of you have already spent some time enjoying the Esri campus as well as the surrounding environment. But I still feel very excited about this session today, which is organized by myself, Lei from Texas A&M University, with Aileen Buckley from Esri, as well as Amy Rock from the Cal State Polytechnic University in Harvard. So in general, the purpose of organizing this session is because we want to find a place and the location for students to voice themselves about the things that they're excited about, they're proud of over the past few years, even with limited resources and the support. And also want to hear from the need from students, either the need for the advisors, the need from the department, as well as the need for companies like Esri, which are providing support to students, but whether the support is sufficient or correctly provided. So that's the purpose of organizing this session. And I'll just use it. Yeah, so we have four panelists in here. I'm going to give a very brief introduction about every panelist, but I believe they already have a lot of things to share being prepared. So I will be very brief in here. So the first panelist is Enshen Dong, who goes by Frank. And Enshen is currently a PhD candidate at the Johns Hopkins University. And the reason we invite Enshen to here is because Enshen has done a very powerful, impactful work, which is the COVID-19 dashboard released by Johns Hopkins University. So Enshen is a core developer and later on become the project manager for the whole website, maintaining the update of the COVID-19 dataset that is being used by a number of governments and the public citizens. So could you remind me about how many times the website have been visited so far?
According to Jack, I think it's 3 trillion.
Wow, 3 trillion times being visited since it's released, I think 2 years ago, right?
Yeah.
2.5 years ago. So that's a quite impressive work. And that is a website that helped me a lot during the beginning and later on of the pandemic, because my hometown is Wuhan. So at that time, we don't have many data sets telling the story behind what being reported from the official government. And the website built by Enshen helped me a lot to understand what's going on with my hometown and how my family is doing over there. The second one is Yuhao Kang, and right here. So Yuhao is also a PhD candidate from the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and Yuhao has been famous for many things. So I just want to highlight one thing, which is called the GI Sphere project. So it is a project trying to collect information about all the available GIS and cartography programs across the world. So it's not only a US database, not only a Chinese database, it's a world GIS program database. I believe Yuhao will have a lot of things to share about this database in the rest of this panel session. The third one is Binzhou, which is also my student in here from Texas A&M University. So Bing has a very broad research interest, including the use of GeoAI, as well as their applications in the transportation, humanitarian help need, as well as the community disaster resilience. And Bing is also the awardee of the KG's scholarship, student scholarship last year. So based on his outstanding research record. So I believe Bing is always a very insightful person with a lot of personal perspectives about everything and with a unique perspective. So I'm really looking forward to have the chance to hear what he really needs for his rest of the journey of the PhD. Now, the last one is Hao-Ying Hong, right in here. From the University of Iowa, and Hao-Ying has been within the field of GI science for a few years. I've been knowing her for a long time, to be honest, because she was very active in participating in the academic conferences, activities, and also the student competitions. She also received several student competition awards based on my knowledge, right, including the KG's student scholarship last year. So personally, I'm very proud and honored to have the chance to chair the session, and also have 4 outstanding students who are overqualified as students and also made tremendous contributions to the GI science in the early career stage. And today, I guess we will have the chance to introduce all of them to share their successful stories, as well as the need they would like to see more in the future that can help them to achieve bigger goals. So yeah, maybe we can have all four panelists to say hi to everyone, and then we can get started. Hi.
It's a lovely afternoon.
Yeah, it is a lovely afternoon, and I believe everybody is excited about finishing the conference and maybe go outside or go somewhere else. But yeah, let's enjoy this part first. And personally, we're looking forward to see what everyone is going to share today. I'm going to just keep in here. So in total, we have two different questions in here today, and each question I allocated about 25 minutes. So hopefully everyone will spend 6 minutes to share your answer or your thinking about the question, and then we can move on to the next question. At the end of the session, I will try to give a comprehensive and concise summary of what has been discussed today. And the first question here is, what are your successful stories using cartography and GSIs to resolve the societal challenges, right? Because as we all know, cartography and GSIs, they're not only a kind of science technology, but also some tools we can use to solve the real world problems. So I believe all four panelists in here have experience with working using the cartography and GSIs with very specific applications. So maybe we can, have a very good discussion in here. And I would like to have like a maybe clockwise order, if everybody agrees on that. So maybe I will start with Enshi and Frank, and then I'll go through here, and then I will be the last one to share your thought about this question. How does it sound?
Yeah, it's okay.
Okay, just to share some of my thoughts about the maintaining the dashboard. So one of the most important thing I learned from the dashboard is you learn by doing. There are a lot of very practical issues when making the dashboard. I didn't learn as a student or even when I work as an employee for other companies. So the thing I learned is just to do what you want to do and make your hand dirty. And then you will get to know the problem, and then you may get a solution or you may not get a solution. So like the dashboard today, we even have many unsolved problem, like should we use the dot or should we use the polygon to represent a location? Dot might be easier to maintain, to have a smaller storage in terms of the file size, but the polygon may be a better way because it can show the shape of the county or shape of the country. So there are different trade-off between those choices. So what we did is, so we created two kinds of a map. One is for the global map, and global map is based on the dot, and the US map is based on the polygon. So this is how we solve this problem. And also, if you meet many other problems like the state of Texas, they have a different definition of what is the COVID death compared with their counties, even those counties are in Texas. So when there is a definition conflict between the state and the county, and you need to solve this problem, how to solve the problem? You need to reach out to the state government and also reach out to the county government and local health department and figure out what's going on. So this is a communication skill. I don't think the geography, as a geography curriculum, will be taught in the class about how to communicate with the governor, how to communicate with local CDC directors, and those things you can only learn by doing, only learn by asking the question and front the problem. So that's my initial idea of how use the cartography and the geoscience to solve the problem and challenges. Yeah.
My turn. Okay.
Yeah.
Since I am the only PhD student here, I guess, so
I'm a PhD student too.
you're a candidate, I guess. So
Never mind.
actually, I'm here to, want to learn something from you, but I do have some stories I want to share. The first one dates back to many years ago. At that time in China, in a power plant, there was a tragic accident happened, and many people are killed in the accident. And since then, the construction came to a grinding halt. And after a year, when the construction restarted, the people who are in charge are so concern about the security and safety of the construction. So they want someone to help them to build a kind of like a web application or smart system to help them to serve to monitor the construction workers. And I am one of the full stack programmers there and help them to build a web application, also integrate some of the indoor location hardwares so that they can have a clearer idea of where those construction workers are, and they can also see the surveillance cameras, things like that. And I think that's my major interaction with the GI science and stuff like that. And the second story I want to share is after I become a PhD student, I've been working on a victim finding project, which is using the natural language processing techniques to identify those help requests from social media. And later, the natural language model was trained and tweaked by ourselves and to identify those help requests. And later, we changed it to like more like a help finding model, which can identify human helps, infrastructure damage, and animal related help, and also offering shelter or help information, things like that. And I gave a talk in West Laco last year, talking about the things we're doing. And the audience there turns out to be quite interested in the things we're doing, especially those who are from like Animal Humane Society and place like that. They really wish that this tool can be applied to finding those lost animals, things like that. Um, and uh, and that's also one of the things we wanted to do in the future, to turn like our research outcomes to some applicable tools that people can use. And the third story is related to the presentation I gave yesterday, is that we scraped some of the help requests during the 2022 Shanghai COVID-19 lockdown. And we also built a dashboard for that, so the volunteers who are engaged in that event could have more insight and intuitive feelings about what things are going on, and it is easier for them to like schedule their tasks. And the final story I wanted to share, maybe this may not be a very successful story, but it is a successful story for myself because I've been a student who focused on the GPS algorithm research, and also I've been a surveyor. So like the precision thing is what I care about most. But when I enter the GIS world, um, people do not care about high accuracy or the absolute accuracy that much, because we're viewing things in a broader view. We're looking at things in larger scale, and also in terms of cartography, we need to consider like aesthetics things, and also we need to consider what kind of information we wanted to convey. So after spending a year or so in the GI science world, I start to have like more sense while considering what research I'm about to conduct. So for me, it was a transformation and something I feel good about. So it is a successful story for myself. Yeah, that's the thing I wanted to share.
Thank you. Actually, precision is quite important, even in the GI science world. It's only because for a lot of studies, we try to overlook or try to not discuss the precision issues or uncertainties in the location information we're handling with. And that's the reason why we're, calling more about understanding, the uses and misuses of the locational data from different data sources. Yeah. But yeah, that's a critical thinking about the data we're using nowadays. And if you can, someone can work toward that direction, it will definitely provide new insights about how we should handle data rather than how we are handling the data at the moment, right? For example, like I believe from insurance France case of the COVID-19 dashboard, you also need to be very careful about which country or which community the component case should be mapped on or be assigned to. So there's a lot of like uncertainties and potentially conflicts behind mapping out the COVID-19 cases to the public, right?
Yeah. It's beyond the cartography, it's about
Yeah.
society.
And the politics, right?
Yeah, a lot of.
All right, yeah,
Oh, yeah.
let's move on.
Can we
Yes, you
share
have a
my-
slide, right? Sure. So. This one's yours.
Yeah, so I have been thinking about what to share about my story. So I thought it might be a good idea to share what I have been doing so far and which challenges I have faced. So my basically my research interest is about GIS science and cartography because from undergraduate, I was in geography department in college, and from there, I have been studying GIS science so far. And about data, I have always been interested in social sensing data. So at that time, I started my undergrad study. So VGI was a kind of trend. So, and then I always have been interested in safety, including like disasters, disease, or even road safety. So these are, this list is not about that I'm doing right now, but so I'll share my story. So this is when I 2014 to 15, it was when I was in my master's program. So the very first research project I remember was about finding road safety for people with visible disabilities using VGI. So including myself, we recruited some people to,
Sorry,
uh,
what is AGI?
it's volunteered geography information. So
Oh, okay.
So we collect, so recruit people and ask them to collect the data. So we made an app and then walking down the street and see if the road is safe for visibly like impaired people. And here I realized that it's too challenging for students to recruit people to collect the data. And it was during the winter time, so it was so cold. So I didn't want to walk and collect the data. So, and then I was, so my interest in social media data started. So this is about my master's thesis. So it was about flood detection using Twitter data. So I collected Twitter data about flood in Seoul. Back then there was a huge flood. So tens of people died. So I wanted to prioritize tweets to monitor first and then map them on the web. But so I was suffering from the data sparsity, so there were not that many tweets like that I wanted to use. And also I was suffering from locational uncertainty. But luckily, I could finish the thesis and publish a paper. And this is what I did back then. So I located tweets and prioritized based on the context. So I wanted to people in emergency monitoring centers to see which locations they should monitor first. And then the purpose was to detect those tweets as soon as possible. So these line graphs are the number of tweets, and I could see that you could see the increase in Twitter before the first news about this flood. So I was pretty fascinated about the study, so I wanted to continue study about social media data. So and then I started a career as a researcher at GIS related government agency in Korea. Back then I worked on this project about like 3 years. So it was developing a monitoring system about crime. So first we developed the crime index about risk about crime. And then we conducted a spatial analysis to prioritize the areas to monitor. So the target audience of this system is monitoring agents in like monitoring centers of local governments. So, so this was an index we developed back then. So what I really enjoyed in this project is that I could collaborate with crime specialists when I developed this index. And also, this should be built in local government monitoring center. So we should have, we should collaborate local government authorities. So this was the prototype we developed. And so I was like, I had fun to search for like old photos back then. So it was the local government authorities testing the system. So our web-based system was built in these monitoring centers to see if there's a crime like occurring real time.
Excuse me, this national level or local
Oh,
government?
yeah, so test was based on 2 local governments, 2 cities. But I recently heard that they are working on applying this system to national level. And then I started my PhD program since 2018. So, and for my dissertation, my interest is to see how spatial temporally human response to disasters are varying and using social sensing data. So my initial research interest is about using Twitter data. So in my early stage of PhD program, I did topic modeling and sentiment analysis using Twitter data. So first I started with extreme weather events. So this was the result of spatial distribution of weather-related tweets, and I could see that like they are overlapped with tornado touchdowns in the US. But again, I was suffering from data sparsity and locational uncertainty, that kind of thing. So, so this was about wildfires tweet, and then I did immigration policy. So, but still, I could not be like satisfied with the amount or quality of data. So I keep changed the topics. And then finally, it ended up using presidential debates data because, you know, during the disasters, the amount of data sparks and then decreased dramatically. So it is hard to have enough data during overall time. So, and then COVID started. So now I'm focusing on human mobility using mobile phone location data during the COVID pandemic. And here, it is good that mobile phone location data is fairly easy to get and the amount of data is enough. But about that mobility data, it's pretty time consuming to process such data. Yeah. So using those data, I'm looking at the relationship between such mobility during the COVID pandemic and then the transmission of COVID-19. And also, yeah, this is what I presented in AutoCarto. So I'm looking at how mobility changes are associated with social vulnerability.
Excuse me, what's the scale of this one? It's
Scale?
Yes.
Oh, it's trend. Yeah. Yeah, so I'll stop here and then share this later.
Thank you so much. That's a really wonderful sharing. So how do you want me to put in a slideshow?
Yes.
All right. Yeah.
Hi, everyone. I'm Yu Haokang, and thank you, Professor Zhou, for the invitation. And I really enjoy your success story that you just shared. I will also share some different aspects of some of my past work and my ongoing work. The first one also related to Anshan's COVID-19 dashboard. Back to 2020, at the beginning of the COVID-19, our lab, led by Professor Song Gao, we were also thinking about how our geographers can bring our expertise to support the pandemic, to support modeling the pandemic and support the decision making. So at that time, we also created a dashboard, an interactive visualization dashboard. And specifically, we utilized geospatial big data, the human mobility data, to track how people respond to the COVID-19 and also the shelter at home policy. And this is a video. Let's see if we can. So as you can see that from the beginning of March to the end of the March, most states, most counties across the United States are in blue, which means people reduce their mobility significantly. And this dashboard was also attracted a lot of interviews and TV reports, etc. And to create such a dashboard, we may need the large-scale human mobility data. Yeah, so we open sourced this human mobility flow dataset on GitHub, which provide different levels, multi-scales of dynamic human mobility flows during the COVID-19 based on safe graph data, such as state level, county level, sensor track level. And as you can see from these maps, compared with pre-pandemic period, the post-pandemic or during the pandemic, people reduce their movement significantly. And this data set is open source, so any researchers can download this and utilize this in their research. So that's my work during the COVID-19. We also utilize geospatial big data analytics to support the pandemic modeling. And in addition, GIS and cartography, the big data geovisualization can also be used to support the equity of to support the social good. For example, we take the Milwaukee as an example, and we use human mobility data to quantify, to observe the social segregation across different regions. As Milwaukee, Wisconsin is one of the most segregated cities across the United States. So these are two figures, and as you can see that mobility, the movement usually within a specific cluster of neighborhood, which means there are significant segregation in the Milwaukee County. And in addition to the research, I will also want to share the GIS Sphere project, which I hope it can promote the global cartography and GIS education. As Professor Zhou just mentioned, we created such a database to include almost all programs around the world. As you can see, these dots indicate the distributions of these programs. And next slide. Yeah. And on our data, on our website, we summarize the program information and also the professor's research interest so that we can provide support for those applicants who want to apply for GIS programs. And the motivation of this project was to support those students who are planning to apply to pursue their PhD or graduate programs. And we also created the Twitter and YouTube so you can follow us. And as you can see, this is now an international version of the product, but at the beginning, back to 3 years before, the product was initiated in China. So most of the subscriber of this product are Chinese students, but we hope it can be extended to international students in the future. Because in Chinese GIS student community, we also host several other activities. Next slide. Yeah, for example, we hosted the online webinars and invite speakers to talk about different topics, such as how do professors recruit students, how to write a good proposal, how to land as a faculty, etc. And we will produce several video clips and publish them on Bilibili, which is the Chinese version YouTube. So as you can see that these videos have attracted a lot of attentions, like one video received over 32,000 views in China, in Chinese GIS community. And we also invite the successful applicant to write some online blogs to introduce their study abroad application experiences. By doing so, we can support specifically support Chinese students who are applying for global GIS programs. As I mentioned, that we hope that this kind of activities can also be extended to the international, to the global students, so to benefit students from different countries. And one interesting point is throughout the progress that we extend our product to the entire global, we also made some connections with students from Africa and some students from developing countries. So they also think that this kind of resources are very useful for them. Next. And in addition, we move forward and even conducted several research based on our database and based on the community. For example, we conducted a research to answer the question how students choosing GIS programs. We distributed a questionnaire to students to invite them answer the factors influence students choosing GIS graduate programs. We hope that this study could also provide strategy suggestions for GIS program managers because we collect students' perspectives, which can help them in the development of GIS programs. And here I only show one figure to indicate some initial results from this study. We show that what kind of courses that students are most likely interested in. And as you can see that data science, artificial intelligence or spatial temporal AI, spatial analysis, urban computing, urban informatics are the hot topics recently in the cartography and GIS programs. So if a program have such kind of topics, they may attract more students to apply for this program. Yeah, that's all. Okay.
Thank you very much. So that's a lot of information, I guess, from the successful stories of building dashboard to share the information until later on, Bert shared his own story about how he entered the world of GIS and how GIS and GIS science and cartography is different from his prior experience in the industry. Then Hao-Yun gave a very holistic review about her experiences in the GIS science domain with applications in safety, transportation, disaster management, as well as the COVID-19 health crisis. And finally, we also give an overview about the use of GIS in pandemic monitoring, as well as a very inspiring project, which is the GIS fair, which helped a lot of people, including myself, benefit a lot from this program by getting to know a lot of outstanding students and other professors around the world. Now let's move on to the second question here, which is about what challenges hinder cartography and GIS science students in creating broader societal benefits, and what are the potential opportunities to address them. Because when I was a student, I always feel like I have a lot of very exciting ideas that is myself feel very excited about. But when I talk to my advisor, there are always a lot of limitations. Either sometimes it's data, it's software, it's resources, or other kind of limitations. So I do think if we can know better about the current limitations and the challenges students are encountering when they try to create a bigger social impact, that will be something can guide not only researchers and advisors, but also the companies like Esri to make some changes and provide available resources for students to make the dreams in their mind happen in the world. So yeah, maybe we can start again from Anshan Frank to share your thoughts about what the challenges you have encountered, when you try to create more social benefits, and what do you think are the opportunities?
Sure. So my background is in majoring in geography and urban planning. So I always see myself as a kind of a geographer. Sometimes this geographer is not modern time geographer. I mean, modern time geographers means you can have a laptop, you can do whatever map you want, but I prefer the feeling of being an ancient geographer or cartographer, which means you need a pen, you need a paper, you need to draw the world with your pen and the paper, and you need your food to measure this world. I love that feeling, which keeps me awaken all the time and help me to think what's going on for the next. To being an ancient geographer, you always need to think about what to explore, what's the next step. And it's like the explorers in the age of discovery. They have the courage to find the problem. They have the courage to find the solution. That's always encouraged me to be a real geographer and not just to be a student, but how to train myself before professional geographers or professional engineers. So that's something in my blood. I don't know if you know, you must know the theory of the continental drift. The German geographer, his name is Wigner. I don't know. Yeah. Yes. So he discovered the South American continent and the African continent. They have some similarity by the boundary. So I told myself, the reason he can find it is because the world map printed in the Western world, they are kind of putting the Atlantic in the center. So that's easier for him to find this correlation. But for me, like I grew up in China and our map is centered in China is the center of the world map, but I can still find it. So I do love this discovery of exploring on the map. But at the same time, I also kind of regret I didn't have the courage like him to find the evidence by exploring the world, to go to remote islands and in remote oceans and in the nowhere on the ocean. So if I get another chance, I may prefer I could be a sailor in the future, or just to be brave enough to explore the world. I mean, the same thing for today's geographer and also a student. I want to be those kind of imaginary ancient geographers or sailors to help me to find out what's the next American continent. So in my life. So which comes to my point is how to keep your imagination and how to keep you brave so you can still have the curiosity to explore the world. I'm always asking me these questions, and this is all the motivations to myself. What I did is, in my undergrad, I pick up different classes in geography, urban planning. I also study seismology, geophysics, geochemistry. And when I came to the US, I studied geographic information system, statistics, spatial analysis, and also transportation engineering. So, and then after that, I worked for about 5 years in the US, working in different industries. Esri is part of that. I was a software developer, development intern in Esri. And I was also kind of GS, one of the GS team member in a telecommunication company, which is taking charge of the 5G poles distribution in the US. And also I was in the power company to help them to set up the power grid in the western coast of the US. So I was trying to use my limited life to explore as many as possible or as many different opportunities in my life. And after all this exploration, I found, okay, I still prefer academia. So I decided come back to the campus and to find a PhD program. Then I found my advisor, and both of us have the similar background. Both of us love the spatial analysis on infectious disease. So because of all those curiosity, all those experience we had, so we can create the dashboard just to maybe 7 hours or 8 hours. So if I go back to this one more time, what's the challenge? The challenge for me is just to be brave and to keep the curiosity. Those are very charming things. So those are very precious personalities if someone can have. But those are something hard to keep. So that's my challenges and my solutions. Thank you.
Thank you so much. You already ahead of many people, in terms of curiosity and exploration, right? And exploration is in our DNA, human-based DNA. So yeah, that's really good sharing. Yeah, okay, let's move on.
Well, the question itself is challenging to me, actually. Okay, I'll start with my application to a PhD degree. The thing I find really challenging is a lack of resource. I didn't mean that I cannot find like the hiring information online, but rather they're just like there's no successful stories I can refer to. So I really don't know what kind of school is good for me or what kind of schools I can apply to. And at that time, as Yuhao mentioned, the GI sphere, I benefit from it a lot. So now me and Yuhao working together. Actually, he's my boss, and and because I think this is very how to say, it will be a quite impactful project in the future, I guess, because everyone in the GI science world could benefit from it. So the first point I wanted to make is that as a PhD student, in addition to doing research, we can also like do some community service and this kind of like public service to broaden our impact. The second point is that we should have our voice heard. Because population-wise, compared to those domains such as like finance, economy, computer science, engineering, and we are the minority groups. So we should spend more effort to get our voice heard. And the third point is about breakthrough. Actually, this idea is from one how to say that? One event held by GI Sphere last week that we invited several professors talking about professors and student relationship. And since GIS is quite interdisciplinary project domain of field of study, the professor suggests that we do not limit our thoughts simply to geography or geoscience, but just like free your mind, think whatever you want to think, and he will support you. So the point I wanted to make is that we should also do not limit ourselves, even though it's really hard because there's a lot more things we need to learn, but we should be brave to like break this limit. And oh yeah, and the most important thing is not where you are, what major you are, it's the incorporation of spatial thinking that matters. That's all.
Thank you. Yeah. So I had a thought about the difficulties or challenges for geographers, because from where I come from, Texas A&M University, if you know the university, you will know engineering is a big component of the university. And turns out we have facing competition from engineers, from landscape architecture and urban planning department faculty members who are doing very similar studies like geographers, like GIS scientists, but they can always compete for larger grant, more students, and way more resources than we have seen. So I was being concerned about where we should stand as a department, as a geographer in the university. On the other hand, if you think a little bit broader, you would think that means more opportunities. It means geographers should not limit ourselves within the geography department or the geography or cartography in general. We definitely can apply the technology, the tools and the knowledge we have into more applications. And that is something I realized recently, and that definitely helped me a lot to help my students determine the dissertation topics that they feel excited about, right? If I always give them the very classic GIS topics that they're not that excited about, it will be a lose situation. But if I give them a topic that is very challenging, but also have the GIS or GSS and cartography component in there that can make them to explore, like I just mentioned, explore new field with their knowledge and technologies, that'll be a very exciting topic. So yeah, I definitely believe we should not limit ourselves within the cartography or the GIS science community. We should go outside of our comfort zone and try to introduce ourselves, have our voice being heard by a broader community and being valued by a broader community. All right, let's move on. I think Holly has a slide again, right?
Yeah, I just listed so I just listed the challenges I wrote for each project I have done. Yeah, so these are them. So even though I had this overarching research interest, which has been consistent, but it was hard to find specific research topics. And I think mainly that's because of the data. Because even though I have this fascinating research topic, if there is no data I can use, then I can't do that. So and I think this availability of good quality data, having this is more challenging for students because we have this limited time to finish our program. So if we can't find the appropriate data we want to use, then it might be more stressful and give us more anxiety. So whenever I do this data analysis or pre-processing the data, I always think like, oh, there should be many other researchers who already did this. So, and for example, now I'm using mobility data from SafeGraph and Yuhao is also using it. So maybe we did the same thing. So I have been thinking, what if we have this like big data repository that we share? Then maybe we can save our time to pre-process or collect and validate the data. So for example, so already many journals require us to share the data we use in the research, but I see many cases it doesn't work well. So for example, I downloaded this Twitter data from one study, and there were many tweet IDs that I can use so I could use those IDs to re-download those tweets, but almost half of them were not valid at the time. So at the point that I tried to re-download them because it was old. So maybe if those researchers could save their data in some data repository that we share, then maybe I could use those valuable data.
To comment on?
Yeah.
Everyone can comment that in time.
So I think Twitter has a policy that you can only share the tweet IDs. So when you
That's why.
put in the request in the API, that's why you can't have access to those others. And obviously, people delete tweets and stuff like that, so you can't control those things. But there are data repositories. So Stanford has Earthworks, right, which is a dedicated geospatial data repository. I'm a librarian and I support our institutional repository. I would love if there was like a national repository for all these kinds of things, but it seems that in the US, we really struggle to do those kinds of things at the national level. We're very good at like an institution or a state, but to go national, it's hard. GenBank is a great example. If we could have GenBank for geospatial data, that would be amazing.
Yeah, so I see some data repositories such as Google supports the data search engine. And
There's a large search engine for data repositories. It's re3data.org. And that's basically a search engine to search data repositories. It doesn't mean that, I mean, there's no standardization for the quality of the data, but you can at least start to find things that way.
Right. And I think there should be some special aspect for like GIS, GI scientists, because we use the data with locational information. So yeah,
There's also a community called Geo for Lib. And that's a group of people that are really focused on the metadata of geospatial data. And, you know, they're the people, like a lot of the members of that community are behind the earthworks at Stanford and think that there are
is it
people
something
thinking about these.
sharing metadata or
Yeah, like trying to standardize metadata and just, I mean, which helps you like find data, right? The FAIR principles, the F is fine, right? And that group, Geo for Lib, is really focused on finding, accessing, you know, making metadata much more usable for people. Sorry.
no?
That's a good comment.
Yeah.
You tapped into my world there.
Yeah, we need the share of data to enable the reproducibility and reliability of the research outcomes. Otherwise, based on my experience, I spent tons of time to collect data, clean the data in my early PhD stage. And I do feel like this might be a big challenge. I mean, it's always good for students to get familiar with the data structure and data formats, as well as the data sources. But on the other hand, it means students will have less time to work on the algorithm, the real research component, based on the data set.
Can I add something quickly? I think this is, finding these repositories is always hard. And for a lot of the courses I do, this is more basic GIS stuff, but there's this great website called Free GIS Data. This, yeah, that's run by a consultant in Southampton. But it is, from our point of view, it's very basic data, so it's boundaries and, you know, water bodies, all that kind of stuff. But I think that's a list sorted by country and by theme, and it is very, very popular. So he doesn't host any data, but he says, if you want countries for Algeria, go to here, or, you know, the United States, go to here. And that works really, really well. So would something like that for this might be a good use? And could this be piggybacked onto the GI-Sphere project? Maybe, because you've got a great list of sources there, but could you do something for, you know, more advanced data sets and, you know, by one for mobility, one for COVID, I don't know. So you see what I mean? So it's kind of getting that list out there is the key bit, we'd say.
Please repeat the name again.
Yeah, it's called, let me see if I'll find the link. So it's Free GIS Data, so FREEGIS dot, yeah, .rtwilson.com. Yeah, if you can't find it, feel free to drop me a line.
Thank you so much for sharing.
You're welcome.
So, and another thing I want to share is that that especially during PhD program, it's so long, so it is so easy to lose our motivation. And actually, I found this statistics that 44% of doctoral students drop out or couldn't finish their program within 10 years. It was pretty surprising. So I Googled how to keep the motivation strong during our PhD. Then I found this blog posting. And I want to focus on the last step, find inspiration. And I think there could be like two things that I can share. So about the previous project that I was doing about crime prevention. So what I really liked about the project is that I could collaborate a lot with like crime specialists or local authorities. But I think it was possible only because I was an employee of government agency. So, but the good thing about it is that when we do research, of course we write like implication, like possible implication in our paper, but I think it really gives us some motivation if we can really see like practical implication that, and we really feel that, oh, my research can be applied in our real life. So collaboration opportunities can really help other PhD students. But it might be hard for students to directly contact people outside academia. So if, for example, there can be some moderating agency or something that connect people outside academia and students who want to collaborate with them. And also, yeah, and the last thing, maybe it is for students, but I think participating in conferences really gives us some motivation. The good thing about this is that we can set the deadline to submit a paper. Yeah, and also like scholarships. So the reason why I was invited as a panelist is I think I was selected as a awardee for KGIS scholarship. But I really recommend you to participate in because it might be less competitive than you expect. So, and not only because it gives us a cash prize, but also it gives us that more confident that our research might be valuable and motivation. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you so much for the sharing. I think the two pathways you identified here are also helpful for faculty members and other researchers, right? Practitioners to be motivated in our job. Every time after the conference, I always feel fully energetic about what I'm going to do. And then after 2 or 3 weeks, I feel like, okay, whatever. Yeah, all right, so let's move on to next one. You know, share the discussion part, right?
Thank you for sharing all of your valuable comments. Some of your points also remind me a lot of things. And I indeed share some similar views and opinions with you. So here I would like to identify 2 challenges. The first one is that as a student, we may not have a big vision to not to know what should go forward. So there might lack of a big picture vision of the uses of GIS technology. So as Hoying just mentioned, like a lot of students lost their motivation. I think maybe one of the reason is we don't know the big picture of the usage of our research. So it is necessary to from a higher level to find such big picture, but that is pretty challenging for students. So I think at this stage, professors may and the advisors may provide more mentorship for students to guide them to think about the big picture of their research. And the second challenge refers to that students may not know how to search for related resources effectively. So like being just mentioned, he also used some resources, but I think at the current stage, there have been a lot of resources that are available, but students don't know where we can find appropriate resources. So here I propose several potential opportunities to tackle those challenges. The first one, I think it is necessary to create several resource hubs, like Nick just mentioned, the list create a set of lists, such as the fresh GIS data you just mentioned. And also it is necessary to create several data repository so that based on these hubs, I call this as hubs. So they may not provide the resources directly, but they may have already summarized a set of lists of the resources. For example, one resource that I use frequently refers to the GIST body of knowledge. It summarizes a lot of key concepts and applications in GIS. It's kind of an online textbook, which is very useful for students. And the other one also refers to the GIS Sphere projects that I created. For each department, each department has their own website. We just summarize the people's research interests. but we would just summarize all of them together to aggregate them together to create such hub. So I think creating such kind of resource hubs are very necessary. And for the second one, I want to say that it is also necessary for students to join different career and academic activities, to communicate with each other, to talk with different people. And one specific point is, I think not only to communicate with researchers within this field, but also it is necessary to collaborate with researchers from different fields to conduct interdisciplinary research. For example, for me, I closely worked with computer scientists and also urban planners, and they may share different perspectives, and sometimes their opinions are even like conflict with each other. But throughout this process, it is great for me to expand my horizon and also to know what kind of templates, what kind of research are in their own field. The last one is it's also like the theme of this AutoCarto conference. It may not. It is also necessary to have some trainings of the ethics. For example, yesterday, professors from Penn State University, they shared a very useful resource. The seminars they conducted, they created a website and provided several materials to training of ethics seminars. So I think these are also very useful resources for students to engage with more professional trainings of ethics in GI science. Yeah, that's all my comments.
Thank you so much. That's a lot of sharing from all of the panelists. I do have a lot of things I want to say, but I don't think time will allow me. And I try to use this one, but I think it's fair for anyone to tell you only 5 minutes or 1 minute to talk. I don't hope the end of the session will be the end of the conversation and discussion, because I know everybody here, especially those who stayed to the last minute of the academic session today, really appreciate your participation. Is that we all are interested in how students can empower social goods. We're all interested in how to improve students' capability to make bigger contributions to the community of GI science as well as our society. So I may call end of the session right now, but I do hope everyone will continue the discussion, and hope you will enjoy the rest of the conference today. Thank you all. Thank you so much.